Suggest getting started in a few minutes, but suddenly there's silence, and I think everyone's ready to begin. So, well, welcome everyone to this space. I was thinking maybe some of the people in back, if they feel like moving forward and kind of maybe occupying some of the seats around the front, you're welcome to bring people closer to Erica and Rachel and Stacy, and maybe also turn off cell phones and watches and embedded chips. So I'm just going to say a few quick words. My name is Christian Hawkey, and I'm the coordinator of the MFA in Writing. And this event is really important for two reasons. First, it marks the Pratt MFA in Writing inaugural Leslie Scalapino Lecture in Innovative Poetics. And secondly, we're privileged to have Erica Hunt with us tonight to kick off this new annual series with a talk lecture composed specifically for this occasion. And Q Lee is also here to interview Erica after the lecture. So let's welcome Erica. I mentioned this in class last week, but this event is really meaningful to me and to the MFA in Writing at Pratt, because the program very literally would not exist were it not for Leslie Scalapino's work and vision. When I first was approached 4 years ago by the then chair Ira Livingston in the HMS department and the BFA in Writing coordinator Thad Zolkowski about creating a new MFA in Writing at Pratt, I was in the middle of reading Leslie's work, and specifically I was reading an interview with her where she insisted that writers need to exist in relation to the public world, such that they were in dialogue with multiple domains and knowledge formations and social spheres outside standard literary discourse or sociality. And it was the encounter with Scalapino's broad thinking, a thinking that is close to Erica Hunt's notion of an expanded sense of poetics, or a more fluid typology that favors plural strategies to remove the distance between experience and writing, that sounded a call or demand to reimagine the dominant structure of MFA programs and creative writing workshops. This program, now in its second year, exists because of that call. The program is, in many ways, and to use a word that she often used, her premonition. I want to thank Tom White for reorganizing his travels to be with us tonight, and I want to thank Dean Andrew Barnes and my colleagues Rachel Levitsky and Tracy Grinnell and all the other core faculty for the MFA in Writing for making this whole evening possible. So Dean Barnes will say a few words, and then Tracy Grinnell is going to say a few words, and then Rachel will introduce Erica. One really important last detail: after this event, directly afterwards, everyone is going to go one block that way to Urban Vintage for a reception after this event where there will be an open bar and open food. So, Andy Barnes.
I didn't know it was open. That means I have to pay for it. I'm not too sure about that. Listen, I'm here on behalf of Pratt, on behalf of the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, to welcome you, and also to thank Tom White for making this possible. You're very generous, and I thank you for that. And I'm also very thankful that you recognize the uniqueness of this program, the MFA in Writing. As you know, as probably all of you know, as certainly as I know, there are 1 million MFA in Writing programs out there today. They're everywhere. This is a very unique program. It doesn't exist in this form anywhere else. And that is really important. And that is because of faculty members, and that's because of faculty members like Christian, who really did put this together. And when I talked to Ira, and I talked to Thad, and I talked to Christian, the idea was to make an MFA in writing that can only exist at a place like Pratt. And they have done that. And they deserve credit for that. So thank you, Christian, for doing this. I also want to acknowledge and thank Rachel Levitsky, because she works tirelessly for this program, getting the word out there, advocating for it. She works tirelessly. You guys don't see it, but I see it. So thank both of you. You've done a tremendous, tremendous job. I think it's pretty amazing that this is only the second year of this program. Because when I'm out in the world outside of Pratt, I hear about this program. When people know that I'm the dean of this school, they go, you have that interesting program in graduate in writing. And I'm shocked by this, that the word has gotten out so quickly among writers and among writing programs that we are doing something different here. And I think this lecture series, the inaugural lecture, testifies to that we are doing something different here. And I encourage that. I congratulate you on that, and I welcome you, and I thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and Pratt for having us. Thank you also to Christian and Rachel for working with me to establish the lecture series here at Pratt as part of the MFA in Writing program, Writing Activism series. And again, thank you to Tom White, Leslie Scalapino's husband, who is here, for your dedication to Leslie's life and work as a writer, teacher, and editor of O-Books, and to your ongoing support through the Scalapino O-Books Fund for the creation of new spaces for activating engagement with the world through and around writing and writing practices. Pratt joins UC Berkeley and Naropa University in hosting this annual lecture series, and in so doing exemplifies the geographic range, interdisciplinary, community, and activist-oriented vision of Leslie Scalapino's own life and work. The Scalapino Lecture in Innovative Poetics has so far presented work by writers, thinkers, and artists, including Joan Ritalik, Jalal Tawfiq, Peta Coyne, Renee Gladman, Lisa Robertson, Judith Goldman, Dorothy Wang, Divya Victor, and Simone White, and Ronaldo Wilson. In 2016, Naropa will host Don Lundy Martin, UC Berkeley will host Nate Mackey, and tonight we begin the series at Pratt by hosting Erica Hunt. Very happy to have you here. Please welcome Rachel Levitsky to introduce Erica.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you all. I'm very happy tonight. So this is not my first time introducing Erica Hunt, but it is the first time that I lost the introduction an hour before I was about to do it. Anyway, I have plenty to say, and part of the first thing I'll do is actually, in the spirit of the program, spirit of collaboration, we collected some responses from faculty and students. So I'm just going to read a kind of collage cento to begin with. Traveling through the physical world with Erica Hunt, one begins to feel and be a part of the pattern that is beyond physicality. Through common objects made uncommon, we are all folded as we slide way into the artifacts of I, you, me, us. Someone broke into the house of broken objects and stole a box of blank, marked invisible. Love for its first time. I wanted love to look like me. I wanted to remind myself to love being braced for the worst. 'Tis is a work of falling apart. Erica Hunt is not scared to critique American capitalism and commercialism. Her writing expresses not only what it is like to live in a house of broken things, but also what it is to be a house of broken things. Lines like, "This is a country within a country where the citizens are contained in innumerable ways will find their way into your future political discussions." Words like freed radicals attached to others that thought themselves harmless, once bonded, they all turn explosive and blast self-content, content. In Hunt's work, we're on the narrowest borderline. A foot can be dipped deeply in either side. Here, broken things are wholesome, made, and our natural resources ricochet through history and science into now. This is a work of falling apart. This is a work of falling apart. This is a piece of work. This is the hollow left by the organized weather. And I also asked Sheila Patterson, even before I lost the introduction, I asked Sheila Patterson, whose importance to this program is maybe not also known, but she's been a real supporter of the program, and also has a long history with Erica, and also has, I know, taught Erica's very important essay, Notes for Non-Positional Poetics, so many times I just asked her for a few words on that. Sheila writes, she begins her essay talking about the new wars and a world at war that some places and people experience as peace, but that peace is a fiction. She pulls the Oz curtain from imperial myth-making and then shows how, when you stand there in that reality, perceived divisions in the poetry world, black, white, experimental, confessional, genre, and gender conventions are also myths connected to a marketplace driven by categories as a way to control interest and profit. Poofed. The myths go, and with them, out of a history, those of us who've been reading her that believe poets are in opposition to each other when we know we're allied in opposition to state oppression goes. So my first introduction for Erica for tonight disappeared. This is a work of falling apart, quote. And yet I wrote it, and now I have written it again, being braced for the worst, moving from possibilities to notes, which is something she notes in her notes, from wrapping it up, from the peaceable, P-E-A-C-E, to the peace logic, also a quote of Erica's, P-I-E-C-E logic. Here's an Erica Hunt, well, you could read it, so maybe I won't, but here's an Erica Hunt bio. Erica Hunt is a poet, essayist, author of Local History and Arcade, 2 chapbooks, Peace Logic, and Time Flies Right Before the Eyes, which Belladonna published and published again recently and is available outside. Other bits are published in Bomb, Boundary 2, Brooklyn Rail, Conjunctions, Poetics Journal, Tripwire, Recluse, in the American Tree. She's a writer for the LA Review of Books. Her essays on poetics have been collected in Moving Borders, 3 Decades of Innovative Writing by Women, and The Politics of Poetic Form. She's received awards from Foundation of Contemporary Art, the Fund for Poetry, and the Jurassic Foundation. What I was thinking about was how hard it is to capture in a bio, or even in an introduction, how it is in the field of relation that a poet and activist, Erica Hunt, operates within, how it is in this space of contact that is so widely influential, where work and presence is action and language of the moment. Erica's work inevitably responds to the nascent, the coming into language being. And this capturing she does, which revives and keeps alive and keeps useful the peace logic that we're living in, P-I-E-C-E, is always in the making, and how this peace logic in the making that Erica is tirelessly working at, recently in her work, Veronica, A Lamentation, that hopefully I think she'll maybe read a little bit of tonight, and also her biography of her father that's available in a PDF of it outside. Back to when she wrote Oppositional Poetics, there's always this moment that she's capturing and broadcasting and amplifying, and that this work is assistance for those of us who get to read her and need this logic in order to continue to make and to oppose in the moment. And I was also thinking that the bios don't capture the work that Erica Hunt does in redistributing wealth into radical activists, grassroots activists, African-American activist groups, that she built the 21st, many people don't know that she built the 21st Century Foundation from a volunteer organization to an $8 million foundation up in Harlem, that she supported the Lower East Side's Girls Club and introduced me to it this year, that she is on the board of the Poetry Project, that she's a really good friend, that walks and conversations with her will change your life, right? How do you put that in a bio? So just to finish, I will say that the state of opposition, then, is the livable state, the outside of the falsely peaceable state, the P-I-E-C-A-B-L-E space. It is a space of body as the body of the world and the bodies of the world, wherein love of one is not distinct, but supported action of social action. Welcome, Erica. We lost you. We lost you.
Thank you, Rachel. That was beautiful. Thank you. Well, I'm glad to be here with you this evening. I keep saying that I've had fun preparing for this evening and preparing this talk. And I hope there's an element of fun and also something that jolts you, that lights up something for you. I think poetry is very important today. I don't always think that, but I think it's very important today. I think the language that we make and that we study and give attention to is absolutely essential to our survival. And the pronouns, those little words, I thought it was time to take a look at the little words and what they can do for us and what they suggest for us, and perhaps how they can help build a new way and a new world. So I've tentatively titled this I, You, We, with an aside on Zee and They. First and last, I owe many people thanks. I'm only going to read a little bit. Most of this is going to be a real talk. I owe many people thanks, though. The gift of the invitation to lecture on innovative poetics came in the fall, but the topic of pronouns in English, it's been with me a long time. I haven't had the opportunity to expand on that interest, but I'm grateful for that, giving them a steady attention and gaze. So I, we offer gratitude for this occasion and the organizers. First, to the poetics faculty at Pratt, especially Rachel and Christian and Tracy. I also want to thank the dean for being so welcoming, Dean Barnes. I want to offer my thanks also to Tom White, Leslie's family, her friends, the poets that helped to serve that fund, who determined to commemorate Leslie's life and work, which transformed perceptual presence into art, and art into a record of presence. I say ashe. Leslie? Rachel told me today that this is the anniversary of the death of Carrie Edwards, a poet who I coincidentally included in the packet. So also to Carrie Edwards, ashe. There are lots of people to thank. People who I'm fortunate to have as friends and others who I've met only through their writing. Kamau Brathwaite, who's prominent in this talk. Alice Notley, Fiona Templeton, Claudia Rankin, many others. Tanya Foster, who's not here, a good friend with whom I have many conversations about poetry. And also Cooley, who is here, someone else I talked to about poetry. Talky talk. So many names I can call out, and if I am still missing any, we unwitting collaborators in this talk, the shards and the rough and tumble are my responsibility alone. Now then, what brings me to pronouns? Well, you know how in middle school you're taught to parse, diagram a sentence? Many people remember that, not with any fondness. I do. I liked diagramming. It was interesting having that horizontal line and all those things and dangling off it on a slant and figuring out where they really ought to go. So I like the small words. And I remember As an undergraduate, I thought, well, I know I'll never make any money as a writer, so I'll major in linguistics. Go figure, the mind of an undergraduate. Linguistics and philosophy. And I studied language, and I remember one interesting fact that stayed in my head once I disabused myself of this idea that somehow I was going to be gainfully employed as a linguist. There was that sentence. She lived with a dead man. She lived with the dead man. And that little word, and the, right? How much it changes and how much time is carried by by that little word, that article, that article, the. So what then of pronouns? What can you get out of a pronoun? An early work of mine, correspondence theory, worked on a simple device, dear and dear, dear, and one of the speakers always used the word I this, I that. The other speaker never used the word I, or a personal pronoun. And I was amazed at the tone shift in that by leaving out the personal pronoun, first person. And then years went by. I mean, I paid attention but didn't, And I went to a performance of You, the City, by Fiona Templeton. And if you don't know that work, it's a great work. Every sentence, it's a play. It happens in the street. People come up to you and they are the actors and they start talking at you. You're an audience of one. There's never more than one person who is the audience who walks through the streets. You're directed from one location to another in Times Square, quite busy. And a person comes up to you, the actor, and every sentence out of their mouth is, you do this and you do that. You have a piece of that, by the way, in your packet. And it's such a powerful feeling to be addressed and yet not addressed. And to hear, again, the tonal shades of you. Most recently, though, I started thinking about you again with Claudia Rankine's Citizen, and the use of you in that work, which functions as both a form of address internally, the you of self-address, and oddly enough, the you of external address and how it shifts without warning. And what does it mean when you address yourself as you? What exactly is going on there in terms of, authentic, an authentic interiority, subjectivity? And does it mean that you're in self-exile? That you can't even say I? That you have to be you? You're sort of standing outside of yourself. So there were some interesting things there, and I've also given a sample of that in the packet. I had to make some decisions because I realized that this subject of pronouns has bottomless fascination for me. I hope it has at least some limited fascination for you. But it's bottomless because every situation, every context will inflect the pronoun. And there are ways to kind of look at that and play with that, and as poets, to use that to bring something forward that might be submerged. And the poets I've chosen this evening, Kamau Brathwaite, M. Narbesi Phillip, Alice Notley, and you, Fiona Templeton, all use the pronouns in ways that are fascinating, intentional, and political. So for the next 45 minutes or so, 40 minutes, I hope you'll walk with me through some of these poems and see how you, how I, how we have subtle shades and registers that are worth noting, especially for writers. So pronouns, what do the linguists say? Well, they say that, the official definition of pronouns says that basically pronoun stands for the noun, right? It's a substitute so that you don't repeat the noun, the proper noun, over and over again. The I and you, the first and second person, are considered dialogic, right? I and thou, I talk to you, you talk back at me. Hopefully it's reciprocal. The third person, she, he, it, are context dependent. There's something called deixis. I wish I had a blackboard. D-E-I-X-I-X-S, which means that it's a display or demonstration. It's like it's a third person reference. You're usually, it's so context dependent that when I say she, you have to be in the room with me to know what I'm speaking about, right? That's right. Okay. Interestingly, we is considered a you and me, right? You and me. That's what we. I'm just giving you the grammar, right? They is them, right? They and them are not us, not you and me either. They. So it turns out that in conventional grammars, they is often used so frequently that they has, we say they do this and they do that and they do this to me, and the they, in fact, often seems like the agent. While things happen to us, they are out there doing it. So that's sort of how, in common usage, it all balances out. They have agency, we are objects. And of course we don't. When you think about political speech, that's not what we want to do, right? We don't want to be the objects. We don't want to be the targets. Okay. They have agency, we have moral righteousness. How's that working out? Yeah. So I want to introduce this chart that I gave to you. I find this kind of an interesting chart. Did you see this? Everybody have a handout? If you don't, could you raise your hand? Ooh, okay. Here. Do we have enough charts? Oh my. Wow, we ran the, hi, how are you? If there aren't enough, could you share? So get close to, still doesn't have a chart? Okay, but are you next to someone who has a chart? Close enough? Okay. Okay. You should come a little closer and get into a cluster of people who do have charts, who do have packages. A lot of charts here, right? Really a lot of charts down here. Okay. So I'm hoping you'll think of this chart as your 3D glasses for this talk. Chart's very interesting. It was interesting to me. It was created by two sociolinguists, Roger Brown and, where is it? Roger Brown and Albert Gilman. And it was created to chart let me describe it first, and I'll tell you what it was created to measure. So the top of the chart in the center axis is more power. Power, the powerful. The bottom of the chart is less power, right? On the left, we have solidarity. What does solidarity mean? Solidarity means, I feel you. I have affinity with you. We agree. We are, we're ideologically grouped, On the right-hand side, and think of these as axes. Think of these as degrees, okay? Some people aren't completely without power. They might fall somewhere on that center axis. Similarly, solidarity, shared ideology, shared belief. We have the same mission. That's on the left, and on the right, it's no solidarity. I don't feel you. Shrug. And then imagine that diagonal as being a third dimension. Equal. We're peers. We have the same rank or status. And that bottom, the bottom of the diagonal, we don't have the same status. It could be race, class, majority, minority, religion. It could be any, gender. It could be any number of things. So this chart was created to calibrate tu and vous. The formal you, vous, and the informal you, tu. Now, English doesn't have that anymore. English had it, though. And most European languages have a tu and vous. French, Italian, Spanish, German, they have tu and vous. In England, in the 13th century or earlier, ye was the second person plural and thou was the singular. You was accusative. Became more fluid over time until the Quakers, the Society of Friends, right, emerged in the middle of the 17th century, and they adopted the habit of plain speech in rebellion against rank or privilege. For that reason, they adopted the practice of addressing everyone as thou. See, because ye or you still was differentiated, and they weren't going to do that. They were going to, because they were egalitarians, they said thou. Later it became thee. But the idea that there was still a difference between the tu and the vous, those are presences in the English language that linger. And so this chart, I thought was interesting, and I thought, well, I wonder if we can use this to calibrate pronouns, and how many degrees can we register on solidarity? We are ideologically similar. So when I say you, I say it with a certain way, and I say it with a certain syntax. And if we're not in alignment politically, do we say you? Does it change? Is there an inflection? When I'm not feeling very powerful or in a strong position with my employer, do I say I differently? I used to do that. I take my time. I am self-made. I put my best foot forward. I put my foot in your back. So think about that a little bit. Does these 3D glasses, will they help us see pronouns that supposedly have no formal variation or informal, no register of power or lack of power? No register of solidarity or equality, Will they help us detect that better as we go through a poem? So that was the question I started with. So who is tu and who is vu? Or the you? Or the you? Or the you? What other power differentials, variables of solidarity or equality are contained in forms of address? The you and I, the we, the they, the teacher and student. How do they use you and I? What about the writer and the reader? What about the writer and the self? What about the writer or the self in a bad situation? How about the employer, employee, customer, salesperson, the elder sibling, the younger sibling? How does this play out when status shifts? Child to adult child, or student to teacher, to former teacher, or woman employee to woman employer? So the next page you have considers another variable drawn from the beginning of Mrs. Dalloway. That's actually, so just look at the Mrs. Dalloway sheet. Mrs. Dalloway said, "I shall buy the flowers myself." Direct speech. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. Indirect. It's actually the first sentence in the book. The third is she would buy the flowers herself, right? Reporting, free and direct speech and thought. Several interesting poets have made the pronoun or made the reformation of language for political purposes and for also just to wake us up, just to shake up consciousness. They have made this their project. One poet is, the poets I'll be looking at are Kamau Brathwaite, again, M. Norbesi Phillip, Alice Notley. With different but aligned poetic practices, they torque the pronouns to keen our senses, our minds, and hearts. Coincidentally, they are all interested in the epic. I find that just kind of fascinating. They are, for each of them, and in different ways, epic is connotative of the epicenter, being the center of your own story, being the center. So what is epic? Epic is often called poetry and history merged, that they combine both of those things. And so they're interested in rewriting the epic so as to include that which has been erased and made invisible. In the case of Kamau Brathwaite, he's really talking about Africans and Africans who arrived here in the Caribbean and the diaspora. So he's interested in the whole project of recentering African experience as central to the large story and to the culture, and impacting consciousness through the reformation of language and recentering that. Alice Notley is interested in the epic from the point of view of saying, well, you know, the epics never really talk about women. They're also silent and invisible in those large stories that merge poetry and history. And for those reasons, but in their own distinct strategies, they tackle this and change language, invent language, replace words, and especially the pronouns, not the pronouns. So thus visibility and invisibility, where the pronoun stands in for the absent referent, is a very important strategy. In Brathwaite's History of the Voice, he proposes something called nation language. And nation language has certain features, but one of them is that it's very specific to location. It's place-based. So rather than having as he said, a Creole that says, you know, if we go back 50, 60 years in the Caribbean, and he was born in Barbados, but like much of the English-speaking Caribbean, they used textbooks from England, and they had, you know, the students had to learn absurdities like, you know, the snow falls on the fields of Shropshire, you know, so this was like next to useless. And what's snow? Where's Shropshire, right? And he proposed, you know, he said that, you know, even the creolization of those English textbooks were not sufficient. You know, when what he meant by Creole, the Creole version would be, the snow fell on the cane fields. You know, so it's like, what's that? So he said, you know, but nation language, by contrast, is the rain fell on the cane fields, right? And for him, nation language was both practical, it was syntactical, it was semantic, and it had properties of the place of the Caribbean, its distinct kind of history, geography, topography. In this essay, it should also be said that Kamau Brathwaite was a founder in 1966 of the Caribbean Artists Movement, which aimed to create a genuine Caribbean arts movement that was rooted in island culture. One of the distinct features that he talks about, I think this is very interesting, was that you know, the places where people concentrated in their population was necessarily on the coast, because that's where the trade was easiest, bringing enslaved black people, right, from Africa to the coast, and so the coast would be very, very developed. It also depended on trade winds, right, that would blow the ships and would make passage faster, quicker money, quicker turnaround, more money from bodies and bodies and bodies and people and trade and cargo. And, but what that also meant in that concentration is that those habitations were very susceptible to the hurricane, right? Because everybody's on the coast. So Kamau Brathwaite talks about the hurricane and the importance of the hurricane and how the hurricane has to be present in nation language. You won't have a nation language unless there is that sound, that piece of the actual geography and weather in the language and in the voice. So nation language emphasized orality, resistance to creolization, because it wasn't going to be good enough just to kind of muddy it. And it had to incorporate the language of the hurricane, the edges, living on the edge from where people were taken to the edge of where people were brought to be worked to death, actually. Another feature of nation language for Brathwaite was that instead of the pentameter, which was of the empire, the language of empire, English, Spanish, all of these, but English in particular, the English speaking, was this thing about the pentameter. For him, it was the dactyl, you know, the sound of so the dactyl rather than the pentameter, drawn from calypso, responsive to temporal and historic change. Total expression, he says, total expression. That is an expression that everybody in the community could participate in and could recognize, not just the written language, but also the spoken. So it's the idea of a new language, a national language, a language that exceeded the nation state because it was meant to foster a new culture. This is in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Kamau Brathwaite, of course, is still alive and active, though I think slowed now. He's in his 80s. This is very much worthy of study, and nation language appears as a thread throughout all of his works. It's not consistent. You think to yourself, can you from the bones of of what you know of your history, can you reconstruct a nation language? And so, and I asked myself that question because I don't, I'm generations away from the Caribbean. I'm really a New Yorker. But there are traces, if you look, I think, in everyone's past. I think his notion of nation language is broad enough to even include the place of the present, where you are now, imminent. So are we responsive to the indigenous peoples of New York City, that were here before, the people who came before us? For him, nation language has got a sort of a forward and back. It's back into history, and it's forward, imagining some kind of future. And how do we mine that language? It's a lot, I think in some ways it's about, he talks about the ghosts, the ancestors, and the spirits. And by that, I think he means to say the totality of language and place, wherever you are, that you try to bring that into the work. And maybe you don't do it consistently. He certainly didn't. A lot of his poetry is written in sort of what we call, kind of standard or fragmented standard English. But then he will thread in nation language. You'll hear a voice. The first poem that I want you to, and we're going to move a little bit faster. First poem we're going to look at real fast is, looks like this. It's called World Making Man for Nicholas Guillen. Nicholas Guillen, Cuban poet, Cuban black poet, very influential for Kamau Brathwaite. Unlike poets of Guillen's generation, freely acknowledging that he is a black man, not saying, oh, well, I'm... This is very important, asserting that centrally. Guillen was born, I think, in the 1880s. Am I right, Chris? 1902, thank you. I have the honor of lecturing to a person who is a scholar of Caribbean literature. So I'm on my P's and Q's, Chris Winks, so we'll talk to him later. Against your teeth of joy, sus dientes de jubilo, America laughs. West Indies, West Indies, West Indies, lit. But suddenly in the night of possibility, it turns to the wall in its creaking bed of dollars. West Indies, West Indies, West Indies, unlimited. And your voice rises like the moon above the day of pigs, above the choruses of, who is it? Who is it not? The Negro. Who is it? Who is it not? My hunger. Who is it? Who is it not? I and I talk to you. So that I and I, the beginning of that, the beginning of taking a pronoun and doubling it to mean we, or you and me. And really, if there were a Venn diagram and I am the I, and you stand slightly to the side of me, and the we, maybe we overlap, and the they is way over there, what is I and I? Let's use our 3D glasses. Where are they? That I and I. Where's that I and I? Are they equal? What about power? What about shared belief, ideology? Yeah. So these shifts, I'm trying to detect something that we don't often think about, because they are ubiquitous pronouns. I and I was almost made for this kind of solidarity. I mean, it came about, it was a kind of, Jamaican slang, I and I, the Rastafarians, I and I, right? But I and I in this context. Next poem, from Wake. Amen to the world of I. Amen, amen, I say. Amen to the world of eyes, I say. Amen to hard edges, certainties, to what your hands must hold. Welcome to the world of the blind, I say, the world of the deaf, of the dumb. Welcome to the closed eyes, broken eardrum, the dreamer. So I include this because of eyes, because I think it's a pun. I think the eyes are an I. The eyes are multiple, are plural eyes. Instead of being singular, yeah, right, first person singular, they are plural eyes, okay? What happens to these pronouns? When he says I and I, eyes, one that corresponds to lived experience, he's referring back to the I that actually is in contact with immanent, with the reality that is present. It's not distant, it's not in exile, it's right here, you know? And in that last poem, he's talking about being awake, awake to the reality, awake to the poverty and the disenfranchisement and to the still colonial mindset that must be fought and resisted. See if I can pull this up. Okay. The next one that I want us to look at is Mikey Smith. It's a stone, it's called, in the corner, if you can see that, stone. And it's a poem that commemorates the death of dub poet Mikey Smith, who was stoned on August 17th, 1983. So in the history of Jamaica, and you might want to know this little piece of background, sometime during, I would say, the early 80s, late 70s, the Jamaica, which was relatively prosperous, had become independent in 1963, increasingly reaching out to other Caribbean nations, made an alliance with Cuba to basically put itself on a path of development independent of the United States. Well, that was trouble, right? In the backyard of the United States. It was destabilized. Drugs entered the country. The political parties were paid money, dark money, if you will, from the United States. Increasing violence on that island. And so if you were on the left, there was money. If you were on the right, there was money that was paying people to fight. So Mikey Smith, a dub poet, a nation language poet, was was walking home from a rally and was killed by a stone. So that's what this poem is about. It's kind of a sad, very close to Kamau Brathwaite. Let me see what I want to read here. Here it is. If you look on the right, on page 61. Murder! And I throat like them tie, a tight tie around it. Twist in my name, quick, crick, and I never wear necktie yet. And a hair when the big boot kick down I door, stump in it, foot pon a knot door, the floor, board, a window slam, shat at the back of me heart. The itch and ooze and damp and the yard in my silver tam, Boreen's closer and closer, St. Joseph marching band crash in and closer, and bumsy katsy kaboom, shipel, bumsy katsy kaboom, shipel, and a laughing more blood and spitting out, Lord. At this point, he is Mikey. He is Mikey. In other places, Brathwaite uses the word MWE, M-W-E, in conversations. That's another kind of we, me and we merged. In another place, Brathwaite uses the word ex-self, which is the self which is exiled, I imagine. That's what I'm getting from it. It's the self abroad, the self, the Caribbean self in England or the colony. And in other places, he goes, I self, the one self, the self that is to become. So for every I, he's got many, many versions. Depending, again, on situation. Where is he? Where is he speaking from? Is he in a place of power? Is he in a place of solidarity? Is he equal? But all of those places, especially dislocation, is marked by a different use of the word I. Brathwaite's project is nothing less than creating new iconographies of icons of the self. To have a self that is invented from the language, that's possible from these inflections and registers in the language, of self-awareness and self-consciousness, a self that is capable of fusing with community, of address. There's this, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, about Ubuntu, which is the idea of I am because you are. So the self in relation, and the self that's created because of relationship. And also the self that he prophesies will become, that will have the voice of the hurricane, that will be conscious of the archive, of the ghosts and the ancestors and the spirits, and also be possible, also have the potential of projecting forward. And so he's going to work that language. He's going to wrestle with it. He's not going to use an assumed I, an assumed you, an assumed we. And I think that's, I think it's magnificent. I think it's really interesting for us to look at. I hope you will become familiar with his work. To him, this is essential in order to leave what he calls the interplantation mindset and to form what he describes as a new epic, an epicenter. And those two are related, the epic and the epicenter. To become the center, to sort of reconstitute the self and the interiority, to sort of reinterrogate this idea of I think, therefore I am. Well, who is this I? And does that apply to I? Or I and I? Like, what is that? And to say that that is worthy of, like, sort of, picking at. Not because you're going to get rid of English and all of its assumptions and its weight of past usage and the fact that it wasn't in some ways meant to include many people who speak the language. It was never sort of we really weren't talking about you as an I. But you're never going to lose that, but to at least start plowing the ground for the future, for an I, which is authentically situated and responsive to place and to lived experience, right? See, where am I? Oh, so the epic, the epicenter, the decentering, that's the other thing, decentering. Do we need a center? Are we always the same center? Are we always the same subject? So let's think about, like, are there different registers and different ways to register that we are also multiple? It depends when you catch us, right? When you catch me. When you catch we. When I catch you. He also has this idea of titalectics. What is that? Titalectics, I think, is a wonderful idea because it acknowledges the ebb and flow of history. We live in a catastrophe. If this week and last week did not prove that, we live in constant catastrophe. The catastrophe not only of the Middle Passage, but the catastrophe of global neoliberalism, the catastrophe of not being able to get gun control, the catastrophe of wars of choice, the ongoing catastrophe. So the titalectics for Brathwaite really have to do with island culture and island consciousness, but we all have to recognize that simply saying that these things are dealt with through some kind of dialectic movement is not enough. We have ebb and flow. We have up, we have down, we have something in between. We learn to live with, as I said in a poem, unthinkable things. How is that registered in our language? And how does that leave its imprint on the self and on our pronouns? Certainly we need new strategies for getting out of that. I'm going to turn really quickly, because I don't know what time I'm at, but I know I need to move, to Norbesi Phillips. And it's called Discourse on the Logic of Language. This is a pretty famous piece. It's recently been reprinted in She Tries Her Tongue. She Tries Her Tongue, Her Silence Softly Breaks. It was reprinted by Wesleyan University Press with an introduction by Evie Shockley, who's here in the audience. Beautiful introduction. We can see a struggle not that dissimilar from Brathwaite's to come to terms with a language that was, in which we are fluent. She's a writer. It's beautiful. But was never meant to really reflect consciousness, our slight disease, and maybe some exile within that language. Here, she talks about the problem of a mother tongue when that mother tongue is gone. A colonizing language that's presented as a montage. And she winds up trying to break it. She's trying to break that language. Not that you can, again, it's like, it's this thing, you can never completely escape, because it's it is your language, right? You have some part in it. You have some part, you are not only have some part in it, you collude with it. It colludes with you. It structures parts of consciousness. It's like, but then breaking it. What happens when you break it? Break its hold on thinking, its rules, constraints, its vision of practical living. English is my mother tongue. A mother tongue is not a foreign language. Anguish, a foreign anguish. English is my father tongue. A father tongue is a foreign language. Therefore, English is a foreign language, not a mother tongue. What is my mother tongue? My mammy tongue, my mummy tongue, my momsy tongue, my mater tongue, my ma tongue. I have no mother tongue, no mother to tongue, no tongue to mother tongue, me. I must therefore be tongue dumb, dumb tongue, dub tongued, damn dumb tongue. Part incantation, part science. If you read the other parts, it brings up the Broca-Wernicke connection, which connects speech to the part of the brain. This is part of the, there's a section of the brain that helps in the production of speech and syllables and meaning. And that's what those parts of the brain chiefly responsible for speech are named after two learned 19th century doctors, etc., Wernicke and Broca. But I also read this as prophecy of an emergent tongue. She has to kill this tongue so she can resurrect a new one. The whole poem is about the mending of the broken body surfacing from the tongueless, from the silencing, from historic condition. Look at the She Tries Her Tongue. It's on the next page. I'm not going to read every poem. It's for you to, but I'm just going to read some. She tries her tongue. Her silence softly breaks. So this is the eponymous poem of the book. All things are altered. Nothing is destroyed. Ovid, The Metamorphosis. I think it's a great epigram. So it describes the language pretty well. The me and mine of parents, the we and us of brother and sister, the tribe of belonging, small and separate when gone. On these exact places of exacted grief, I placed mint-fresh grief coins, sealed the eyes with certain and final. In such an equation of loss, tears became a quantity of minus. With the fate of a slingshot stone, loosed from the catapult, pronged double with history, and time on a trajectory of hurl and fling, to a state active with, without, an unknown, I came upon a future biblical with anticipation. The prophecy, the murder of this occupying tongue, colonial tongue, and somehow the promise of it being kind of rebuilt or reconstituted, reshaped out of the ruins and the wreck. And something also of the place, the reality, the lived reality. Again, this might be time to put on our 3D glasses. The me and mine of parents, the we and us of brother and sister, the tribe of belonging small and separate when gone. On these exact places of exacted grief, I placed mint-fresh grief coins, sealed the eyes with certain and final. In such an equation of loss, tears became a quantity of minus. With the fate of a slingshot stone, loosed from the catapult, pronged double with history, and time on a trajectory of hurl and fling. To a state active, with, without, an unknown, I came upon a future biblical with anticipation. Notice the small I. I'm going to go to Notley. I'm trying to move fast because I want to have time for a conversation with you. Notley. Notley is also concerned with the epic, the juxtaposition, the relationship of poetry to history. Her concerns seem to be to create a multivocality, reinstatement of the invisible, women who are in the story, in the legend, or in the epicenter again. It's restorative. You can't undo the past, but you can be more truthful about it. Honesty about the ruin of the world. I read a little bit of I, the People. I, the people, to the things that are, were, and come to be. We were once what we know when we make love, when we go away from each other because we have been created at 10th and A in winter, and of trees and of the history of houses. We hope we are notes of the musical scale of heaven. I, the people, so repetitious, and my vision to hold the neighbors loosely here in my light of gel, my vision come out of my eyes to hold you, surround you in gold, and you don't know it ever. Everyone, we the people, having our visions of gold and silver and silken liquid, light flowed from our eyes and caressing all around all the walls. I am a late pre in this dawn of we the people, to the things that are and were and come to be. Once what we knew was only and numbers became. It is numbers and gold, and at 10th and A, you don't have to know it ever. Opening words that show that we were once the first to recognize the immortality of numbered bodies. I'll leave it there. In white phosphorus, let's look at this for a minute. Turn the page. White phosphorus. Whose heart might be lost? Whose mask is this? Who has a mask and a heart? Has your money been published, been shown? Who can and can't breathe? Who went to Vietnam? We know who died there. This was then, is now. Whose heart? All our heart, the national heart. Whose mask has its own heart? A mother's mask. Whose money do we mean? A woman's money. Woman's money. Who? In Notley, the I and the we are interchangeable in the poem. The I and we manages to make room for the people, even as the self speaks and gives voice. The poetic I as a special case of I. The quotes in the white phosphorus are a kind of noise. I think of them as a kind of stumbling block. You have to keep running into these quotes. So it's a kind of, there's this notion in physics, or I guess maybe physics, yeah. Stochastic signal. It's a random pattern of noise, but what it does is it gives shape to the meaning that is there. So it's almost like you have signal, words, noise. It keeps breaking and basically gives a form and a shape to what is put down on the page. Those questions, right, are addressed, I think, to us. I think they're addressed to us, but you have to fight past the signal. You have to fight past the stochastic noise of things in order to get to the being, the meat. In Notley's I, the people, she makes room for the people, even as the self speaks. I want to look at you in Claudia Rankine. The power of address. Who is speaking? So you can be used lots of ways. The external you, and the internal you, as I was talking about before. Personification of an object. Oh, you damn rock. Oh, you damn, it's you, right? It's external. And then there are various other uses of you, and I wanted to take a quick look at citizen. If you look at that very first section, you are in the dark, in the car, watching the black-tarred street being swallowed by speed. He tells you his dean is making him hire a person of color when there are so many great writers out there. In that second section, you think maybe this is an experiment and you are being tested or retroactively insulted, or you have done something that communicates that this is an okay conversation to be having. That you, is it the same you in the first section and in the second section? Why do you feel okay saying this to me? Which you is that? Why do you feel okay saying this to me? Is that still self-address? Yeah. You wish the light would turn red or a police siren would go off so you could slam on the brakes, slam into the car ahead of you. Who's driving? Be propelled forward so quickly both your faces would suddenly be exposed to the wind. 3D glasses time. Who has power here? Is there shared ideology? that's for sure. Are they equals? Even with the self. It's like a interesting, self-exile. How about, let's see if I can find this other one. These are not flaws. I'm just pointing, I'm not criticizing the text. I'm actually asking us to notice, that's all, Yeah, one of the U's are silenced. Here's another one. I thought it was here, it isn't. Where's the paragraph? Oh, there it is, okay. When you arrive in your driveway and turn off the car, you remain behind the wheel another 10 minutes. You fear the night is being locked in and coded on a cellular level and want time to function as a power wash. Sitting there staring at the closed garage door, you are reminded that a friend once told you there exists a medical term, John Henryism, for people exposed to stresses stemming from racism. They achieve themselves to death trying to dodge the buildup of erasure. Sherman James, the researcher who came up with the term, claimed the physiological costs were high. You hope by sitting in silence you are bucking the trend. Who's they? Why not we? So again, it's just really to get at these questions of what are our choices around pronouns, and do you make a choice? Do you leave it out? Do you leave it in? Do I say I here? Do I, what? And at every juncture, we have a little bit of a choice. We have a choice about how we want to inflect things and how we want to deliver them. And it's intentional, I think some of this is intentional. Third section, there I go. Oh yeah, this is the Starbucks story. Okay, so she's standing on. When the stranger asks, why do you care? You just stand there staring at him. He has just referred to the boisterous teenagers in Starbucks as niggers. Hey, I am standing right here, you responded, not necessarily expecting him to turn to you. He is holding the lidded paper cup in one hand and a small paper bag in the other. They are just being kids. Come on, no need to get all KKK on them, you say. Now there you go, he responds. I think it's perfect. She's become a you. There you go. Again, not a flaw, but an interesting demonstration of the subtle power of pronouns, the ways that without reflection we are cornering ourselves. We hold ourselves contained by the language that would actually spit us out. Spit me out. You. I'm going to leave this here. Let's go to we. We got to keep moving. Oh, the you here, there's another use of you here, which is Fiona Templeton's, an excerpt from her play. Which first sounds very conversational and dialogic. You're back. You'll love that sound. Yes, I'd like you to meet. You come alone. You're very brave. You've got something. You wanted to come. You wanted to see it. You wanted me to be a nobody. You're talking about you went undercover. You have a whole new identity. They'll change your lifestyle. You'll get a new number. Dead before you get there. They're not your typical everyday person. It wouldn't take you long to figure them out. How do you get somebody to say, I'll talk? I think you have to point that out. The tools you have available enable you, so on and so on. But every you has got a different direction. Every you, first friendly, conversational, then all of a sudden accusative. Then all of a sudden you're past tense. Then all of a sudden you changes, and that change, again, is a property of pronouns that, again, can be used to great effect. How thick the paint? We. So what do the linguists say? The linguists say that we is about power. Usually the person who uses we the most has the most power, so up in terms of our 3D glasses. It has that kind of, it is a commanding we. They talk about the power, the royal we. There's an editorial we. There's the we of public discourse. There's an authorial we. In general, these are distant we's. Who uses we? Who gets to use that pronoun? How do we take it back? How do we become agents? We sometimes as a disguise. Really, sometimes there is no we. We also can be cooperation, collaboration. We work together. How do we use that? Poets of the we. So this idea of Ubuntu again, I am because we are. How do we join and really make an authentic we, a we that makes sense, you know? And can we broaden that we to become more than, you know, we share ideology or familial kinship ties? Can we talk about we with the non-human, we with the planet? Right, James? Environment and identity. We with the planet. We with other, you talk about the we of the city, of our civil society. A kind of intersubjectivity, and how does that get manifest in poetry? A bigger sense of we. I'm going to clean up now. One more. A we that includes our ghosts and spirits and ancestors, those who've come before us. They. As I suggested, they, you know, usually is way outside of our circle, our range. The they that are constantly doing while we rest on our moral righteousness. How do we connect with the they? Do we want to? Again, this idea of Ubuntu is useful to think about how the they might be connected to us and how we might also be a they. Recently, in terms of, you know, pronouns, particularly to talk or refer to non-binary people, we're actually recovering they as a singular pronoun. In the 18th century, they were, you know, it was a perfectly, 19th century, actually, for some of us, still is, a perfectly legitimate way of saying, for someone whose gender is non-specific or we don't know, or we say they. And so it's to recover that. It's not necessarily a big leap out of our language practice. It's one we've had all along. Today someone sent me an article, James sent me an article from the Washington Post. They're adopting they. Whoop whoop. And so I guess, you know, I use this, my little device, because I want to connect words, pronouns, beliefs, and social structure. And that we mix in that. We pay attention to the language. We are calibrating, bathing, sleeping, dreaming, walking, talking the language with a kind of attention that is probably exceptional in our society. So how do we look at pronouns and think about how change is either stymied or possible through language for ourselves and for our readers? And to look at how we could unsettle some stable subjectivities, decolonize the mind, refuse to draw the line, ask good questions. For that reason, I leave you with a Carrie Edwards poem, Good Questions. Or I leave this phase of the talk with this poem. Quick answer, no. Quick answer, there is no here to there, no. Quick answer, no. Face to face, tag, you're it. Quick answer, there is no answer. Quick answer, stop being a body with organs. Reach escape velocity. Undo the gender tape on the body. Put on with superglue. Stapled in for good measure. Can you spell escape route? Quick answer, no, yes, yes, no. No, yes, yes, no. Quick answer, how would you like your Macs alike today? Served your way, this way, or that? Choice A, or A, or A, or A, or A. No. Quick answer, maybe. Toto knew. Home is where all objects cower in demonic mimicry. Community is the now of now, of now, of now. Quick answer, can the tools of the master race, tongue or master, master, major, major, be anything more than have it now moments? Quick answer, become unrecognizable, schizophrenic in a minor key. Quick answer, no quick answer. I am of the airwaves, virtual, vital, and a good fuck on Channel 4. Quick answer, it is always post-post, historical post-post, never and can be, divergent, unexpected, endless curves, always post-post, never-nevers, are always bold Holocaust roadmaps, one or the other, guiding one through future minefields. Quick answer, the coyote and trickster. Quick answer, feel the deep talons of commodity sink into flesh. Quick answer, resistance is futile. You are already virtual, stuck in quantum glue. Quick answer, no, it's already too late. Thank you.